Imagine this. A 6'5" German bodybuilder with platinum blonde hair arrives in Los Angeles with $1,400 in his pocket and a dream bigger than his muscles. Within weeks, he's sleeping in his car, dodging bullets in a gang shootout, and cleaning up after mud wrestling strippers just to survive. Fast forward 2 years, and this same man is replacing Jean-Claude Van Damme in a major action film despite having zero acting experience. His name is Matthias Hues, and if you grew up in the golden age of action movies, you've definitely seen him die in amazing ways on screen. But what you haven't heard is how Hollywood used this German giant to make every hero look good, paid him a tiny amount of what he deserved, and then pretended he never existed. Born on Valentine's Day 1959 in the small German town of Waltrop, Matthias Hues seemed destined for athletic greatness from the start. Growing up on a ranch without television, he poured all his energy into sports, becoming a track and field superstar who represented Germany's hopes in pentathlon competitions. At 19, he was part of the team that won medals in handover, proving that despite his tall height and heavy weight, he had incredible speed and agility. But Matthias wasn't satisfied with just running fast. He discovered martial arts and threw himself into training with the same intensity, eventually earning a black belt in Taekwondo and becoming a skilled kickboxer. His family had artistic blood, too. His mother, Maria, was the niece of Engelbert Humperdinck, the famous composer who created the opera Hansel and Gretel. But Matthias wasn't interested in music or opera. He wanted something different, something bigger. He wanted what every young man in 1980s Germany wanted when they watched American action movies. He wanted to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. After graduating high school, Matthias made what seemed like a practical decision. He moved to Paris to study hotel management, following a normal path that promised stability and a respectable career. But the mid-1980s were an exciting time, and Paris was ground zero for a fitness revolution that was sweeping across Europe. The Jane Fonda aerobics craze had just hit and health clubs were popping up everywhere, packed with people desperate to bounce around in leg warmers. Matthias joined one of these clubs and immediately recognized an opportunity. This wasn't just a trend. This was a gold mine. He returned to Germany and opened not one but 2 health clubs, flying in aerobics instructors from the United States to teach his eager customers. The businesses thrived and Matthias was making serious money. But every night he'd watch American action movies featuring guys like Arnold and Stallone, and something bothered him. These men looked like superheroes, and audiences around the world worshipped them. Matthias looked in the mirror at his own muscular body and thought, why not me? Here's where most people would have played it safe, kept the profitable businesses, maybe expanded into more cities. But Matthias wasn't most people. In 1986, Matthias Hues made a decision that would change his life forever. He sold both of his successful health clubs, packed his bags, and boarded a plane to Los Angeles with exactly $1,400 and a suitcase full of dreams. No connections, no acting experience, no work visa, and barely enough English to order a burger. What could possibly go wrong? Everything as it turned out. Within weeks, his money disappeared. The cost of living in LA was brutal, and Matthias found himself in a nightmare situation, homeless in Hollywood, sleeping in his car, desperately trying to figure out his next move. This is the part of the story that Hollywood loves to romanticize in movies. But the reality was far uglier. Matthias wasn't living in a nice car parked in a safe neighborhood. He was cramped, dirty, broke, and terrified that immigration would find him working illegally and deport him before he ever got his shot. But quitting wasn't in his vocabulary. He found work wherever he could, taking a job as a bouncer and doorman at a nightclub despite having no legal right to work in the United States. The job was sketchy, the hours were terrible, and the pay was garbage, but it kept him alive. Then things got even more intense. During his first few days in Los Angeles, Matthias found himself in the middle of a gang shootout. Bullets flying, people screaming, chaos everywhere, and somehow miraculously he survived without a scratch. Welcome to Hollywood, kid. Most people would have taken that as a sign to go home, to admit that maybe the American dream wasn't meant for everyone. But Matthias doubled down. He eventually landed a gig at the infamous Tropicana Club, where his primary responsibility was cleaning up the mess after mud wrestling strippers finished their performances. Not exactly the glamorous movie star life he'd imagined back in Germany, but Matthias kept showing up, kept working, and kept believing that his break would come. He joined Gold's Gym in Venice, the legendary mecca where bodybuilders, celebrities, and Hollywood players all trained together. Every day, Matthias would lift weights alongside people who were living the dream he desperately wanted. He worked, he trained, and he waited for his moment. And here's where luck finally stepped in. Because in Hollywood, talent only gets you in the room. Luck gets you the job. That moment arrived in 1987, and it came from the most unexpected source. Derek Barton, a former Hollywood stuntman who managed Gold's Gym, received an urgent phone call from a film producer. They had a crisis on their hands. Jean-Claude Van Damme had just dropped out of their upcoming action film, No Retreat, No Surrender 2, and they needed a replacement immediately. The role required someone massive, athletic, and intimidating. Barton looked across the gym floor and saw Matthias doing his workout. "That's your guy," he thought. Barton convinced the producers to give Matthias a screen test, which was absolutely insane considering Matthias had never acted a single day in his life. He couldn't deliver lines naturally, had no understanding of camera angles, and his English was still heavily accented. But when he walked into that audition room, the producers saw exactly what they needed, a terrifying physical presence that would make audiences believe he could destroy the hero. Against all odds, Matthias landed the role. The film was a Hong Kong-American co-production directed by Corey Yuen, and Matthias would play the villain Yuri, a ruthless Russian commander opposite action stars Cynthia Rothrock and Lorraine Avedon. For $6,000, Matthias Hues became a professional actor. Think about that number. Van Damme had just walked away from the project, probably over money or billing or some contract dispute. They replaced him with a guy they could pay almost nothing. A guy so desperate for his shot that he would have done it for free. And Matthias knew it, but he didn't care. The film hit theaters in 1988, and while it wasn't a massive blockbuster, it was successful enough to open doors. Suddenly, casting directors knew his name. His signature look, that platinum blonde hair, the massive frame, the cold blue eyes, made him instantly recognizable. Hollywood had found its new go-to villain. But here's what nobody tells you about being Hollywood's go-to villain. It means you're useful, not valuable. It means you're a tool, not a star. 2 years later, Matthias landed the role that would define his entire career and cement his status as a cult action icon. The film was I Come in Peace, also known as Dark Angel, a 1990 science fiction thriller starring Dolph Lundgren as a renegade cop hunting an alien drug dealer. Matthias played Talek, the extraterrestrial villain who came to Earth to harvest endorphins from human brains to sell as drugs on his home planet. The character had white eyes, platinum hair, and an eerie habit of saying, "I come in peace," right before brutally murdering someone. It was pulpy, it was ridiculous, and it was absolutely perfect. Dolph Lundgren later recalled that his co-star was bigger than me, blonder than me, and incredibly athletic. This guy was a bronze medalist at the Olympics. The two giants threw each other around Houston for 90 minutes of glorious action mayhem. But this wasn't just another action movie for Matthias. It was the most dangerous shoot of his entire career, and it revealed exactly how expendable Hollywood considered him. The director, Craig R. Baxley, was a former stuntman who pushed for maximum authenticity, which meant real explosions, real fire, and real danger. Matthias recalls hearing the pyrotechnics expert repeatedly warning that certain explosions were going to blow Matthias right up. The director's response: "Well, he just has to jump higher or run faster so it won't get him." Let that sink in. They weren't adjusting the explosions to be safer. They were telling the actor to risk his life to get the shot. So that's exactly what Matthias did. Every single day he performed some of his fastest runs and highest jumps, his heart pounding out of his chest, knowing that if his timing was even slightly off, he'd be seriously injured or worse. "My heart rate was always way up every day," he later admitted. "The worst part was knowing beforehand that if I wasn't fast enough, it would get me." The film earned mixed reviews upon release, but over the years, I Come in Peace developed a passionate cult following. Modern critics have praised it as one of the most entertaining B-action films of the era, and Matthias's performance as Talek is frequently cited as one of the most memorable movie villains of the 90s. This should have been the moment when Matthias Hues became a household name, when Hollywood started building franchises around him the way they had for Arnold and Stallone. But that's not what happened because Hollywood had already decided who Matthias Hues was allowed to be, and they had no intention of changing that decision. Instead, Matthias spent the 1990s in what can only be described as Hollywood purgatory. Constantly working, never advancing. He became the king of straight-to-video action films, churning out movie after movie, and battling virtually every martial arts star in the business. Kickboxer 2, Star Trek 6, Black Belt, Mission of Justice, TC 2000, Talons of the Eagle. Every year brought 3, 4, sometimes 5 new credits to his filmography. Every year he fought a new legend and proved he belonged in the same conversation. And every single year it still wasn't enough. He battled Billy Blanks. He fought Bolo Young. He took on Don the Dragon Wilson, Lorenzo Lamas, Michael Dudikoff, and Cynthia Rothrock. If you needed a 7-foot wall of muscle to make your hero look good in the final fight, you called Matthias Hues. And that was the problem. Hollywood didn't see him as a star. They saw him as a service. A very specific, very profitable service. Directors loved him because he was professional, prepared, and fearless. His co-stars respected him because despite playing terrifying villains on screen, off-camera, he was a gentle giant known for his kindness and work ethic. He brought legitimacy to these productions because everyone knew he could actually fight. His Taekwondo skills were authentic. His physicality was real, and he performed many of his own stunts. He was living the dream, or at least a version of it. Except it wasn't the dream. It was the dream's ugly cousin who shows up at family gatherings and reminds everyone what settling looks like. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Matthias Hues never achieved the superstar status that everyone predicted. He never got his Rocky or his Terminator. That one massive hit that would launch him into the stratosphere. And it destroyed him slowly, one missed opportunity at a time. In a brutally honest 2008 interview, Matthias admitted the painful truth. What Bloodsport was for Van Damme and Rocky for Stallone or Terminator for Arnold, it takes a huge box office hit to make it big time regardless of how good you and your talents are. You have to keep at it till you happen to be in a film that does just that. He acknowledged that while he'd managed to make a good living and build a respectable career, he'd never reached the heights of his fellow German-speaking muscle man Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Why?
Matthias had a theory, and it's one that accuses the entire industry. I am too shy to play the Hollywood game, but it is a must. You need to sell out and go out and pretend to be more than you are and make people love you. Read that again. You need to pretend to be more than you are. This is a man who represented his country in athletic competitions, who earned black belts through years of discipline, who survived homelessness and gunfights to chase his dream, who nearly got blown up doing his own stunts. And he's saying he needs to pretend to be more than he is. That's not a personal failure. That's a system that values performance over substance, marketing over merit. The missed opportunities haunted him like ghosts. He was cast opposite Jim Carrey in The Mask, one of the biggest comedies of the 1990s, a film that would have introduced him to millions of mainstream viewers. Then he was replaced at the last minute. No explanation, no apology, just gone. He played a gladiator in what was supposed to be one of the most expensive television pilots ever produced. A show that could have made him a household name. The pilot never aired. It disappeared into Hollywood's graveyard of failed projects, taking Matthias's opportunity with it. He was set to portray Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Kennedy Shriver family biopic, a role that could have shown his dramatic range and proven he was more than just muscles and martial arts. The project was buried before cameras even rolled. Time and time again, Matthias would get tantalizingly close to major studio productions only to have them slip through his fingers at the 11th hour. And the physical toll was brutal. Unlike many action stars who maintained one signature look, Matthias had to constantly transform his body to avoid being pigeonholed. He'd drop up to 40 pounds for certain roles, trying to prove he could do more than just play muscle-bound villains. He studied with some of Hollywood's best acting coaches and speech instructors, working tirelessly to lose his German accent so he could play American characters convincingly. The effort paid off. Many people in his own country didn't even realize he was German because his accent had become so subtle. But despite all this adaptability and dedication, Hollywood kept him in his lane. The imposing foreign villain who gets destroyed in the third act so the American hero can triumph over and over and over again. In 2019, at age 60, Matthias Hues decided to tell his story. He self-published an autobiography titled Shirtless in Hollywood, The Battle for Hollywood, a no-holds-barred memoir that pulled back the curtain on his wild journey through Tinseltown. And the stories inside are absolutely insane. Tales of dating some of the world's most famous women and discovering exactly how much those evenings cost. Being flown by helicopter into the lair of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang for reasons that still seem unclear. Pool parties with A-list celebrities where the glamour barely concealed the desperation of people clawing their way up or trying not to fall down. Encounters with con artists and scammers who tricked him out of money with elaborate schemes that only work on people desperate enough to believe. The book reveals a Hollywood that's simultaneously more exciting and more depressing than most people imagine. A place where dreams come true, but usually for someone else. Reviews praise Matthias's brutal honesty and straightforward writing style. He doesn't sugarcoat the failures or exaggerate the successes. He admits when he was naive, acknowledges when he made mistakes, and shares the harsh lessons learned from decades in an industry that chews people up and spits them out without even bothering to learn their names. One reviewer noted that the book is filled with tall tales that you wouldn't believe if they were made up. But as the saying goes, truth is stranger than fiction and sometimes more entertaining. Another called it an essential read for anyone trying to make it in Hollywood because it shows the reality behind the fantasy, the struggle, the heartbreak, the constant hustle just to stay relevant in a town that forgets you the moment you're no longer useful. What's remarkable is that even after everything, the near-death explosions, the missed opportunities, the financial struggles, the realization that he'd never be Arnold or Stallone, Matthias Hues never quit. Now in his mid-60s, he's still working steadily. Terror on the Prairie in 2022, The Last Cumite in 2024, a loving throwback to 80s martial arts films featuring legends like Cynthia Rothrock and Billy Blanks. He's worked extensively with Mark Dacascos, appearing in Showdown in Manila, Ultimate Justice, and Maximum Impact. He's added producing and writing to his resume. At an age when most actors have long since retired, Matthias Hues is still chasing the dream, still believing that his breakthrough role could arrive any day. "I say, I am just really getting going," he told one interviewer. "And now, with all that I know and learned, I can be a better man and actor." His net worth is estimated at around $5 million. Not bad for a guy who arrived in America with $1,400 bucks, but also not the stratospheric wealth of the A-list action stars he competed with and, let's be honest, often outperformed on screen. So here's the question nobody wants to ask. Was Matthias Hues not good enough for superstardom, or was Hollywood never going to let him have it? Because when you look at the facts, the answer becomes uncomfortable. This is a man with Olympic-level athletics, legitimate martial arts credentials, an imposing screen presence, the willingness to do dangerous stunts, professional work ethic, and the ability to carry films. He had everything except the one thing Hollywood demands above all else, the willingness to play their game, to schmooze and pretend and sell himself like a product instead of an artist. Matthias Hues represents something Hollywood doesn't like to acknowledge. Proof that the system is rigged. Not rigged in some conspiracy theory way, but rigged in the sense that talent and hard work are necessary, but not sufficient. You also need luck, timing, connections, and the stomach to compromise parts of yourself that maybe shouldn't be for sale. Matthias refused to sell those parts, and Hollywood punished him for it by keeping him useful, but never letting him ascend. His legacy lives on in the cult classics that defined an era. Fans still quote, "I Come in Peace," still celebrate his battles in TC 2000, still appreciate his work in dozens of films that never played in major theaters but found devoted audiences. In the age of streaming, a new generation is discovering these movies and asking, "Who's that massive blonde German guy?" His distinctive look made him unforgettable. Once you've seen Matthias Hues on screen, you'll never confuse him with anyone else. But here's what really matters. Matthias Hues is still standing. At 65 years old, still making movies, still in phenomenal shape, still believing in what's possible. Hollywood used him, underpaid him, typecast him, forgot him, and moved on. And he's still here, still working, still fighting. Maybe that's not the ending he deserved, but it's the ending that proves he was always tougher than any character he ever played. So is Matthias Hues a failure who never made it, or proof that Hollywood's definition of success is fundamentally broken? Because from where I'm sitting, a man who survived homelessness, gunfights, near-fatal explosions, and 40 years in the cruelest industry on earth and still shows up to work every day looks a lot more like a winner than the system that tried to break him. Hollywood forgot Matthias Hues. But maybe, just maybe, Hollywood was never worthy of him in the first place.